Autoimmunity, that's when the immune system, which you can think of as the body's defense department, turns on itself. Usually, obviously, the immune system, the defense department, is supposed to attack the enemy, but in autoimmunity, you get friendly fire, and instead of attacking the enemy, it turns its very significant weaponry on itself, on the body itself. There's two types of autoimmune diseases. You have autoimmune diseases that are organ-specific, thyroid autoimmune disease, type 1 diabetes is pancreatic autoimmune disease. You also have systemic autoimmune diseases, and this is autoimmune disease that affects the whole body. Lupus, for example, is an example of a systemic autoimmune disease that affects the whole body. Rheumatoid arthritis is an example of an autoimmune disease that is systemic. People who have autoimmune diseases are sick. Now, that's kind of obvious, but what it means is they're more susceptible to cancer, they're more susceptible to other autoimmune diseases, they tend to have earlier demise than regular folks. If you have an autoimmune disease, you're susceptible to a lot of things that can make your life miserable, in addition to the specific autoimmune issue that you happen to be suffering from. There's lots of things that can trigger an autoimmune disease. Chemicals can trigger it. Parasites can trigger it. Infections can sometimes trigger it. But by far and away, and this should be obvious when you think about it, the most likely suspect when it comes to turning on the autoimmune process is going to be foods. Now, this can be additives in foods. This can be plant-based defense systems that are in foods, things like gluten and other lectins, which we haven't talked about yet, but these are plant molecules that can initiate a defensive response. And it can be the chronic ingestion of food allergens, foods that we don't agree with, foods that cause an allergic response. Because the immune system is basically housed in the digestive system, in the digestive tract, this should always be the first place that you work. Yes, it's true that there are chemicals and toxins, mercury, for example, and food additives, perhaps, or infections that can trigger an autoimmune disease, but by far and away, the most likely suspect, the first place you want to work with, is going to be food. And this leads us to the 7 basic ways that you want to address an autoimmune problem. First of all, do the elimination diet. What that means is you write down everything you eat, and then you notice which foods trigger either a flare-up in your autoimmune symptomology or that trigger digestive symptoms. Either way, you're dealing with a food that you want to eliminate, and you keep doing this, thus the name elimination diet. So it's a good idea, by the way, to fast, and I'll get into fasting here in a moment. It's a good idea to hit the reset button, clear the decks, eliminating food that happens to be in the digestive tract. Do a 1 or 2 or 3 day fast. You can do a swear of cleanse. And then you start writing down everything you eat. Try to eat simply so you know what food is causing what. In other words, if you eat, for example, a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and you react, you're not going to know if it's the bread, you're not going to know if it's the peanut butter, you're not going to know if it's the jelly, you're not going to know what's causing the problem. So instead of a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, just have peanuts. Instead of having a chicken taco, just have a chicken breast. In other words, try to simplify your eating so you can isolate what's causing the problem. And then when you've noticed a problem, either a flare-up in your symptoms or in terms of a digestive problem, that's a food that you want to eliminate. That's called the elimination diet. And that leads us to the second way that you want to reduce immune system symptomology or mitigate the signs or the problems associated with an autoimmune disease, and that is with fasting and caloric restriction. This is a general panacea for all inflammatory health issues, which basically means all degenerative health issues, whether it's an autoimmune disease or whether it's just plain old arthritis. When you reduce your caloric intake, and that means calories, not necessarily nutrients. We're not talking about nutrition. We're talking about calorie restriction, maintaining optimum nutrition. That's called the CRON diet, C-R-O-N, calorie restriction, optimum nutrition. When you reduce your calories, caloric restriction, or ideally do a fast, all inflammatory symptoms will subside. Now, obviously, you have to eat, but when you start eating again, you eat carefully and you watch what kind of foods are triggering a symptomology, and then you eliminate those foods. So fasting is the second thing that you want to do, and caloric restriction is the second thing you want to do if you're dealing with an autoimmune disease, and this can lead you into the elimination diet and food elimination. The third thing is working with digestive juices or digestive chemicals, digestive enzymes, and bile in particular. And there's a lot of reasons for this. For one thing, one of the reasons why the immune system becomes activated in an autoimmune disease is because food particles undigested food particles literally leak into the blood through a broken down or deteriorated digestive lining. Now, lots of reasons why the digestive lining deteriorates, most especially the standard American diet and our malnutrition. But once stuff leaks into the blood, this can initiate an immune response. So in addition to the caloric restriction and food elimination diet, what you can do is you can strengthen the digestive system using, number one, digestive enzymes, especially enzymes that contain proteases, proteolytic enzymes, which is the fancy way of saying protein digesting enzymes. The immune system is triggered largely by protein. So incompletely digested proteins that leak into the blood can turn on the immune response internally. When this happens, the body there'll be an immune response inside the blood, and you'll have immune particles and food particles combining inside the blood. The body will have a tendency to dump those out in various soft tissues of the body. Those soft tissues will then get perceived as the enemy. So if, for example, you eat a food that is not completely digested and you have food particles that are entering into the blood, protein particles that are entering into the blood, and you have this immune response in the blood, and then the immune cells plus the food particles get dumped off into the thyroid, now the thyroid will look like the enemy, and an immune response will be mounted against the thyroid. The same thing can happen in the pancreas. The same thing can happen in the kidneys. It can happen really in any soft tissues of the body, and that soft tissue, whether it's the thyroid or the pancreas, will now get perceived as the enemy because it's got all of these immune cells and undigested food particles, and you'll get an immune attack on that particular structure. So by using digestive enzymes, just one simple little digestive aid, especially featuring proteolytic enzymes, protein digesting enzymes, these food particles can get broken down more completely, and then when they get into the blood, they'll be less likely to initiate an immune response. The second thing you could do as far as digestive juices is you can use something called bile salts, or perhaps precursors to bile like lecithin. A lot of good digestive enzyme products like Youngevity's Ultimate Enzymes will have bile salts in them. You can also use lecithin to help your body make bile, or you can use stomach bitters, Swedish bitters, radish, arugula, dandelion greens at the beginning of your meal, not the middle, but the beginning of your meal to stimulate bile. Bile will also improve the digestive response and reduce the likelihood of food particles leaking into the blood. Bile also does something else very interesting, and this leads us to the next way that you want to deal with autoimmune disease, and that's by using probiotics, good bacteria. There's a lot of reasons for this, but one of the most important reasons is because good bacteria help the body process estrogen. And estrogen in addition to being a female hormone, is an inflammatory hormone and will exacerbate the immune response. And we know that autoimmune disease tends to affect women. A lot more women get autoimmune disease than men. So there's an estrogen component, but not so much estrogen as it is the breakdown products of estrogen. The bacteria in the gut are responsible for breaking down and helping clear out excess estrogen. When this doesn't happen effectively, derivatives of estrogen, breakdown products of estrogen, which are called catechol estrogens. They're not really estrogen, but they're more like breakdown products of estrogens, can accumulate, and this can also exacerbate the immune response and the inflammatory response. So by using fermented foods, the Biolumin nightly essence, probiotic supplements, things that help support probiotics in the gut, things like vegetable juices, for example, or apple cider vinegar, or fiber. All of these will support the environment for a healthy digestive tract. This can help the body eliminate estrogen and reduce the accumulation of the catechol estrogens. Bile can do the same thing. Bile salts, whether you're taking them exogenously in a supplement, in your digestive enzymes, in your ultimate enzymes, or if you're stimulating the secretion of bile by using arugula or radish or Swedish bitters at the beginning of your meals, that too can improve the elimination of estrogen and reduce the accumulation of so-called catechol estrogens. Another wonderful strategy for autoimmune problems is using gelatin or using type 2 collagen. This can act as a decoy so that autoimmune immune factors will attack the type 2 collagen or attack the gelatin rather than the connective tissue. This is especially effective if you have rheumatoid arthritis, and type 2 collagen and gelatin have been used to treat rheumatoid arthritis and connective tissue disease, or autoimmune diseases that affect the connective tissue. So in other words, it acts like one of those heat-seeking missiles where they drop off a flare and the heat-seeking missile goes after the flare rather than the airplane, sort of like a decoy. That's kind of how the type 2 collagen in the gelatin will work. Also, your gel caps have type 2 collagen or have gelatin in them, your glucogel caps, and then also bone soup. Bone soup is a wonderful source of liquid collagen. So chicken soup with bones in it, where you make homemade chicken soup. I'm not talking Campbell's chicken soup, but homemade chicken soup where the cartilage dissolves into the liquid. That can also be a nice strategy for reducing the symptoms of autoimmune disease. In fact, that's a great strategy for all immune problems. Then there's nutrition for building the immune system. One of the problems with an autoimmune disease is your immune system is weak, so you have low levels of antigens, of things that stimulate the immune system. The immune system isn't strong enough to totally clear them out, so you get this chronic low-level inflammatory activity, immune activity, because your immune system isn't strong enough. So using nutrients to boost the immune system can be helpful. Essential fatty acids, your ultimate EFAs from Youngevity, they're a go-to immune-boosting nutritional supplement, especially omega-3s. That's because you can't have inflammation and you can't have anti-inflammation without essential fatty acids. These are the quintessential molecules of inflammation and anti-inflammation. Essential fatty acids initiate the inflammatory process and likewise initiate the anti-inflammatory process. Of course, if you have any problems absorbing your fats or digesting your fats, you're going to want to work on your digestive system. That means bile and digestive enzymes and lecithin, things that help you process fats. Minerals, there are three particular minerals that are important for the immune system: zinc, copper, and selenium. All immune-boosting nutrients. Zinc deficiency, by the way, is extremely common, one of the most common of all nutritional deficiencies. Then there's the vitamins. Vitamin C, probably the poster child for immune vitamins. Vitamin C and vitamin C deficiency is somewhat common. Vitamin A and vitamin D are also very important for boosting the immune system. And vitamin E has got some really interesting anti-inflammatory properties and anti-autoimmune properties as well. Vitamin E is one you absolutely have to supplement with because it's really not found in many foods. And then the B complex is also important for all immune system functions, really for all functions, but especially immune system functions, because the immune system and the cells of the immune system turn over so fast, and the B complex is very important for helping cells develop and mature. The B complex is also your energy vitamins, and the immune system is a very high energy system. A glutamine powder is also wonderful for the immune system. Glutamine is found in whey protein and the Slender FX if you're using Youngevity products. You can use glutamine powder straight by itself. Glutamine is found in real high protein foods. It's a muscle building amino acid. It's important for brain health, but it is stupendously important for the immune system and also for the digestive system. So it helps protect against leaky gut syndrome, and it also helps support immune health. And then the last strategy, and one of my favorite strategies, just an all-around health strategy, but especially for the immune system, is to use polysaccharides, long-chain sugars. These have a wonderful immune-boosting effect, and they're also anti-autoimmunity. You can get polysaccharides in aloe, in noni. Mushrooms are a good source of polysaccharides, and probably the best source, or one of the most powerful sources of polysaccharides, is algae like fucoidan. So everybody who's dealing with an autoimmune problem should probably be using the Fucoid Z. I like the Fucoid Z better than the Z radical because you get more fucoidan per dose than you do in the Z radical. But the Z radical is good too. It's just it's not as potent.